Welcome back to the channel, guys. Well, today we're doing something different. We're in my normal working domain in the surfboard mini factory I've got here. And as you can see, if we come into this room here, this is where all the shaping gets done. And mold making and science fiction props and you name it, but pretty much normally just the shaping and sanding gets done in this room, and then the glassing of the surfboards gets done in that room there, and the artistic stuff. I've been doing this for since 1988, so quite a few boards over the years. It was my full-time gig for many years, and as you guys know now, it's all pretty much V-dub stuff and boards on the sides as well. So today what we're going to do is we are going to shape up this board here. This is what they call a pre-shape, and it's off a machine which has a cutting wheel. You can see it's got all the little ribs and everything in it, and it pretty much gets the board to a 90% finished shape. We're going to finish shaping it and then get it ready for glassing, and then the design factor and sanding after that. So this is the actual shape itself has been designed on a computer. What we do is we just go through the parameters of what I want, what concaves, what, you know, how much rocker is in the board, what kind of rails on it, and then that gets cut out at a local factory that produces the actual foam as well. Yeah, that's pretty much how we get it done. So I'm just going to go through the steps. It's definitely not V-dub related, but you know, if you're interested to know how a surfboard gets made, stick around and we'll show you how it gets done. So one thing about this foam, there is obviously two kinds of foam now. There's the PU foam and then the EPS, which is the polystyrene foam that you would get, say, in a stereo packaging sort of foam. That's a different kind of foam surfboard to this one. They generally call those ones epoxy boards. This one's a PU board, which is polyurethane, which is the more conventional board that you would have had back in the day. And pretty much still most of the team or the pro riders are still riding this style. They have a piece of timber up the middle of them, which they call a stringer, and that adds rigidity and obviously strength to the board. However, they do still snap. And I always say to people, you know, if you get a big wave land on top of this, it'll break it in half pretty easily, because how heavy is a bucket of water? And take 50 buckets of water and dump it onto it. So you can see how the power of the ocean. That's a cross-cut or a section of what the blank looks like. So you can see it's just got that piece of plywood timber, and you can see how easily this stuff snaps. No, it's not very strong by itself, okay? But when you go and wrap it with fiberglass, then it does get its strength back. So we're going to go over the dimensions of this one. This board here is actually going to be pretty much replicated this broken one over here. Now this one here is actually, if we have a look at this, this is actually the different kind of foam. You can see the difference. This is the polystyrene foam. You can see it's just little balls. And this doesn't even have a stringer in it. This one's actually got the carbon fiber rail on it to give it its strength. So, however, they still do break. So we're basically going to, the client wants this board copied basically. So we're going to, you know, get most of the dimensions off this, and which has been done obviously already. And now we're just going to get this thing shaped up. So let's get cracking on it. Okay, so one of the first jobs we're going to do is put on the side lighting, which it's on, but turn off the top lights, and you'll see what that does is creates a shadow, like so. And now you can see all these little lines that the machine's left, and we're going to basically start to get rid of those with some sandpaper on a foam back, and that'll just start to clean up the pre-shape a little bit. What I've done already is just this tail section here. I've just cleaned that up a little bit and just changed the profile slightly in the tail here. Just wanted to make it a little bit thinner, and you can see that's just that bit of foam that's been cleared off. So we'll grab our little foam pad and start cleaning this all off. Now we use this little little planer. It's like a little mini planer, just to get the timber down in the middle because it's raised up. Okay, so we're going to do the other side now. Okay, so that's pretty much the bottom flat. It's got a couple of little bubbles here, but not much we can do about that until later on. But it's looking nice and flat. You can actually turn off some of the lights. And you can see it brings up any imperfection. And you can go back over it. What we'll do now, use this guy. Righto, so next stage is we've got top and bottom nice and flat, and we want to start looking at the rails. You can see here there's quite a hard line right along here, so we've basically got to get that nicely curved over. We're going to start on putting the board on its edge, and then we use a gauze paper which looks like, oh, if I can find it, this place is a mess. Yeah, this is gauze paper here. It's kind of like fly wire with an abrasive sort of stuck through it, and we use that to round the rails. So I've got a strategic little tiny piece that I normally use, which is that piece right there, and that's what we're going to use to do the rails. So let's get it set up. We pretty much just pop it on its edge in here, and you want to be careful to how many strokes you do on one side. You've got to copy it on the other. That's really important. So basically starting it, keeping it taut and running along. Trying to smooth it all in, using the shadow to see what's going on. And then we're going to flip it onto this side, and we're going to start to roll over the edge. Actually, I'll flip it around so you guys can see it. You can see this hard edge here. We're going to round that off. But down here we want to blend it and keep a sharp line. This part here is quite critical to getting a good stable grip in your bottom turn, so you don't want to round this off too much. So we'll just start up at the nose, very slight roll here. Looking good. Okay, so that's what I like to do now, is just double check the rails. I'll stand the board up like so and run my hands down it like this to make sure they are the same. Righto, so the next stage we've got is routering out this shape for the plugs. I'll just show you what one of the plugs looks like. That's the plug there. That gets basically buried into the board, and that's what we've got to do. So we've got a line here. We've got a line here for the side fins, and obviously one down the middle for here. So we're going to use a router, this little guy here, and step out the foam. Let's do it. Righto, so next stage now is going to be to glass in the plugs, and we will put it into the glassing room now and go from there. Okay guys, so as you can see here, we've used these little, I suppose, templates to hold the plugs where they need to go. You don't need to use those. A lot of people don't use them. I just like it because I can sight up the board with something physical to look at from here, and I can tell whether or not the fins are perfect or not. Sometimes I have picked up boards in the shop and the fins have been slightly cockeyed or not quite pointing at the nose or where they should be. So this is just my method of doing it. I know people don't always do this, but I like it. It just means they're going to be absolutely perfect. But we just dip a little bit of resin into the hole and then drive the plug in and then just let this dry. And once it's dried, then we can take these guys out, and then we put a little sticker over the top of the hole, because obviously we don't want to get resin inside where the fins are going to go. And once they're sealed, then we add our pieces of fiberglass cloth around these areas, and then we obviously glass the entire bottom of the board with this fiberglass right here. So that'll be the next stage. We've got to let this dry now, and once it's dried, I'll bring you guys back in and we can continue. Okay, so we've pulled out the template little plastic holder things, and now what we need to do is put these little stickers over the top of this section here so that we don't obviously get any resin dripping down inside there, because that would be no good if we did that. So yeah, let's get these strapped on. Probably can't do it one-handed, so I'll have to put you down. Pretty much like that, boom boom. So that's covering up those little areas. And now on to the next stage. We actually need to write the dimensions of the board, so we better go and do that too. Hang on a second, let me get my pencil. Okay, so we have a board that is 5'11" by 20 3/4 by 2.5 inches thick. And this one is for Mark. All right, you can see here, that's our 4-ounce fiberglass, and there's different ounces. There's 5.5, there's 6, there's 8. Generally a high performance shortboard, you'll do a 4-ounce on the bottom, one layer, and then you'll do two 4s on the deck, or one with deck patches, or a 6 and a 4, or a 5 and a 4. The combinations are you know, you can go whatever you want to do. Generally for my performance boards, I just tend to do a 1/4 on the top and 1/4 on the bottom, and a couple of deck pads for my feet. I'm not very heavy footed, so I don't need to have a lot of heavy glassing on it, but this is fine. Over the plugs, I'm going to show you here, we actually add another layer just to reinforce those areas around the plug, and that is a 6-ounce. You can see it's a coarser weave to the 4-ounce, and the 6-ounce is just that little bit stronger. So that's what I do under the plugs. So what we need to do now is just use the scissors and trim around here, generally leaving about a 2-inch curtain hanging down, and that's going to get laminated up onto the deck for strength. So we'll get that cut out. Let me see if I can do this one-handed. Let's have a go. So about that kind of amount hanging over. And on the tail here, what we normally do is Again, kind of hard to do this one-handed, but I'm trying. Do a little V-cut like that. And those little parts there come out. Get this one a bit more. Like so. And then what I do now is I use my fingernail and just run it up the stringer. And that is going to give me a register, because we're going to roll this back so that we can put our decals on. So what I tend to do is roll the glass like so. And when we go to roll it back down, we've got a line to follow. So you can see we're just going to roll it up a little bit further because we've got a logo to put there, which I'll show those logos in a minute. And same with the front. We'll just come to the front here, trim it off straight. And then we just do a little V like this. Same deal. You can see that just puts a mark in the fiberglass. It's not going to show up later once it gets laminated, but you get the idea. Let's roll this back like so. I'm not really sure where I'm putting the logo on this one. Maybe somewhere across there. Now, a lot of people ask about stickers and they say, oh, you know, can I grab an actual sticker and put it under the board? And you can't, because the stickers, the decals are actually tissue paper, and they're actually porous. So the resin actually passes through the material. And I'll show you here, these are my decals. You can see here. So this is what the decals look like. Now when you put these up to the light, you can see light passes straight through the logo, and that's what you need to use. They're printed onto tissue paper, and that's how we do it. So we're going to use, I'll probably use one of these little tiny ones and maybe a red one for this board. You can see I've cut out the nikstik logo, and we're going to put it, there's a couple of little bubbles there just from the foam blowing process, and we'll just go and do that and place it right across the top so you won't see it. Well, one of them anyway. That's, you know, it's a handmade board, so that's just what happens sometimes. And then we've got the other little tiny one here, which I think we'll just go and put that down on the tail. You can just live down here somewhere like that. That'll work. Cool. All right. So next stage now is we are going to get the resin mixed up. And we normally mix up a tiny bit of resin and put a bit of hardener in it for underneath the logos, and the rest of the resin goes on without any hardener because it's actually special UV activated resin. And that means we can take the board outside, put it under the sun, and it'll actually kick off and go off under the sun. Some people don't like it. I love it. I reckon you can just smash out boards all day long and use it. It works great. I think it came from the printing industry. They were using crystals, UV crystals, to make the inks go off faster, and then they ended up somehow modifying it for putting it into normal resin. So you normally buy it in a little tin like this, and yeah, just tip that into a full pail and off you go. So let's decanter a little bit of resin into a container. I'll put my mask on. I probably won't be able to talk much with that on, but the idea is basically we're going to pour some resin over the middle of it, put the decals down, squeegee those. We use a squeegee, and once the top of it's wetted out and the air bubbles are out of it, then we come over to the edges and then lap the edges over, and then we can take it out into the sun. So let's get going. Okay, so it's been out in the sun and nice and dry and ready to rock and roll for the second coat. So basically what happens now, you can see where this overlap has come around. You just give that a very light sand to make sure you haven't got any bits that are sticking up, because if you do, when you put these layers of fiberglass on, that'll end up being a little trail of air bubbles all the way along, and then you'll end up just with a crappy looking board at the end. So that's what you need to do, is just very lightly sand that, and not obviously sand into the foam, otherwise you'll take chunks out, and again, it'll look like an ugly thing when it's finished. So it does take a bit of skill. I think surfboard making, you know, shaping is a skill, glassing is a skill, and sanding is a skill. So you really need to master all three things to become proficient at making a good quality board. So definitely took me quite a few boards before I was, you know, comfortable making them. And like I said, from 1988 till now, there's, you know, a couple of thousand boards I've made. So anyway, next thing we do now is we put another 2 layers of glass on the top of the board, and then we'll do exactly what we did on the bottom, and then overhang lap underneath to the other side, and then the final stage will be the filler coat, which is just painted on resin. So let's keep going. Okay guys, so what we've done here is we've put 1 layer on top of the board, and I've also got a couple of little extra pads just down here in the tail, and this is the 6-ounce glass, just because generally if you're a little bit heavy footed on the back and you've got your back foot here, you tend to crack this section of the board. So that's just a little extra little bit of security there for those sections to make it a bit stronger. And you can put carbon fibre pieces there and whatever else you might want to put, but this time we're just going to go plain white. That's the layer which is the first layer that goes on. And just rub this down a bit like that. And now we put a second layer of 4-ounce over the top of this, and then this one will go down another 2 inches below, and then that gets lapped underneath. So this one stays like that. We'll pull another sheet out now and keep going. There we go, so that's ready for glassing. We'll just go and get our decals, and obviously the decal will sit between the layers of fiberglass, so we can put the decal on here. It doesn't have to go on the foam. As long as it's covered by 1 layer, we're all good. So let's go and grab a couple of those. We'll put one down the tail, one on the nose, and then we can get this thing coated. Righto guys, so the next stage now is we're going to coat the board just with filler resin. Filler resin basically has a wax and styrene added to the resin to create a barrier so that the resin will actually go hard. Right now this resin here is quite sticky because it's actually laminating resin, so it won't ever go completely off, but that's what we normally do the glassing stage with. And then after the laminating stage, we add wax and styrene to the resin. And then we just do a coat just with a 4-inch. I use a 4-inch brush. Some people use a 3-inch. But now what we're going to do is just coat a very light, thin coat on. We do it to both sides. I've already done the the top of the board, so that's already done. So what I'm going to just do now is coat the bottom of the board. What I want to do also is create a little sharp edge along the back here, just for aiding in when you're bottom turning on the bottom of the wave. It just gives you a little bit of grip having a bit of a sharp edge on the tail. Use a bit of tape, and I'll just run a little bit of a section along here, which will create a little dam, and pretty much only take it up to about this much of the board. And then I can peel that back slightly with my fingers, like so. I'll do the other side as well. Like that. Okay, come back here. Bend it back a little bit. And that creates just a little bit of a little dam inside here. Now what you don't want to do is go and touch this part of the board with your fingers, because you're going to have grease on you've got oils in your actual skin, and if you touch the board you won't see a fingerprint, but after we put the resin on and it goes and dries, you'll end up with fingerprints all over the board. So at this stage now, when you're handling them, you always use plastic bags on your hands, or gloves if you're wearing gloves, but don't go touching the board at the laminating stage, otherwise you will leave fingerprints in it. So that's pretty much ready to go. We're going to give this a coat of resin now, and we'll do that. Okay, so the next thing we've got to do, that is all ready for sanding. We've got to put the leg rope plug in. This is what the leg rope plug looks like. And what we do is we basically just drill a hole straight through here, drop it in. It's got those little retaining things there to sit above the surface, and then the top little layer gets sanded off later on. So we always go through, I always like to go through the stringer. Just gives this a little bit more rigidity so that it doesn't fall out if you put it in the foam like that. So it's going to live right about there, like so. And the way I put it in is I've got the drill, and I have this little piece on the end, and I basically just go whoop-bam, straight in. But I do use a little jig, so and my jig is this thing over here. Alright, pull this in. Righto, so all we're going to do now is just drop some resin in here, and I just put a little bit of Q-cell and some fiberglass matting little pieces. That just gives it some strength. But basically we just drop it in like that and let it go off. So let's get it hooked up and done. Drop our resin into here. Done. All right, so we will let that dry, and I'll bring you guys back in, and then it will be ready to put it into this room here. Put my big fans on and start sanding the board. We've got a couple of little processes we do with the sandpaper, Viber, and the big polishing sander, and we'll get it done and go from there. All right. Righto, guys. So I've got the fans on, and we're going to start sanding this board. We're going to use this sander here first, and then finish off with the random orbital. So we'll get into that one. We're just going to do the flat areas, not the rails, just top and bottom, and then continue after that. Okay guys, so we're up to the coating, the filler coat, which is just that last layer of resin that we put on it, which is quite thin. You can see here the consistency. It's pretty watery, and we add the wax and styrene to it, which just gives it that little layer on top, I suppose, once we paint it on. And we just use a 4-inch brush. And you can see I've actually gone and put some tape, some masking tape, just around the edge, and just folded it ever so slightly, give it a little bit of a crease like that so that the resin will drip off. And we want to coat the entire rail down to that line. And then we'll come back and just hand sand and get rid of the little line off the side. Obviously put some tape over the plug because we don't want to get resin inside that. Yeah, that's pretty much it, ready to give it its final coat. Then we'll hand sand it. We're going to put a couple of black stripes on this one. So we're just going to do that with some paint and then put some clear acrylic over the top of that just to seal it. We're just waiting for the temp to come up in the shed here because you really don't want to be doing any kind of resin work, anything under 15 degrees. Realistically, 20's the preferred temperature. At the moment now we're on about 16, yeah, about 17 degrees, so we're not far off it. Just wait a little bit longer. Okay, so we're back from the sanding room and we've pretty much taken it down to a 600 wet, just a 600 sandpaper. And you can see now I've just put some masking tape and we're going to do a couple of strategic black lines. So what you can see here, we're going to do some black in here and some black in there. And obviously there'll be white between it. Just masked off the tail here. Now we have to just mask off the decal and the plug and the decal up there. And then put some paper on it and spray our black down the middle. Let's get it done. Righto guys, so that's the black painted. We'll just put the heat gun over that quickly to dry it off and then we can de-wrap it. Okay guys, so here is the finished product. Let me just flip her over and I'll show you the design. Pretty simple one. There you go, you can see nice black GT stripes. Make it go faster, of course. So that is ready to go. I'll probably leave it for around a week just for the resin to cure and get nice and hard, and then the customer can put the tail pad on and the leg rope and put the fins in and it's ready to rock and roll. So these are the FCS2 fins, or fin plugs I should say, and the idea is with these, if you don't know of course, is the fin's removable, so it goes in on a tab and clicks down and you can pop them out and use them whenever you want, or you can permanently screw them in through those little holes there. So you've got the best of both worlds. I like to always run at least one grub screw because your leg rope can get around the back of the fin and actually tap it and knock it out. And I've lost fins before just because I didn't have the grub screws tied in. It's just one of the design faults, I suppose. But anyway, that's it there, and you got your dimensions: 5'11", 20 1/3, and 2.5, and she's 32.5 litres. So yeah, board's done, and off to another happy customer. And we will catch you guys in another video. I might even do some more surfboard ones down the track, maybe with a bit more artwork on them. All right, catch you guys later.